driving and stressing out about getting there. So I have the best job in America. Honestly, I get to find solutions and bring them forward. Another technology we have is called Funware. Funware is a wayfinding application that my husband, who's also an IT geek, was in Las Vegas. When he walked into the hotel, and this was like 6 years ago, it says, hey, welcome to the Palms Hotel. I know where you are. Do you want to have a coupon? Using that same technology, we've implemented that at 38 of our hospitals. And if you are waiting more than 20 minutes, you get a coupon that says, hey, would you like a Starbucks coffee? Hey, this is what's happening. Your patient moves from the surgery suite to their room. We send a text that says they've now moved based on automation. So, love my job, love it, love it, love it. As I talk through what that means though, and you're like, wow, she's kind of cool, that's kind of fun. Here's the fact of the matter, I'm human, just like all of you. And so when I start to look to say, what can I tell you? Like, how do you get to where I'm at and get to that fun stuff that you do? You have to find your passion behind doing that. It is very easily, when I'm meeting with the present CEO, I could walk away, look, I can't solve this problem. Clear weapon didn't work. You walk away and you do something different. Instead, it's that pause and really listen. And so over the course of my life, there's 7 items that I've really come to land on that are my principles for how you find passion and purpose. And I'm hoping each one of you, if you find one, just one thing, then I will be happy. One thing. So here's what's going to be on my tombstone. Wife, mother, grandmother, daughter, sister, friend. I also will be aunt, so thank you for Sophia and thank you, Clark, who are both, yay, they're both attend here. My Dallin Larson and his wife, Katie, who also attended here, so thank you. I put Ann on there as well. And this is my favorite quote, and I probably repeat this 4 or 5 times a week. The organization that I work, Common Spirit Health, is 2 organizations that come together. One was Catholic Healthcare West, which became Dignity Health, 38 hospitals, and Catholic Healthcare Initiatives, which is 110 hospitals. We now are one, and we're faith-based. And the really great thing about being part of a faith-based organization is sometimes we make decisions on prayer. And that's important, because if prayer is important to each one of you in here, and listening to a spirit or a higher power, it's picking that type of an organization. If you look, just side note, if you look at our logo here, Common Spirit is a scripture, and I'll do that later on in here. But we wanted to be recognizably Catholic. And so in there is a cross in that rose that you see there. The other slight, just so when you see it in the marketplace, you're like, oh, wait, I know something they don't know. The T, the font there actually has a hook on the end of it. It looks like an umbrella. So we changed it to look like another recognizable cross in it. So you'll see this on my tombstone. You'll also, at least 2 people in the audience know what songs I want played at my funeral, so we've got that. Here's 7 principles. Now, you'll notice they all have P's in it, right? Because if there's something it's either you write a poem that has a rhyme or you do something that has something that you'll remember, so there's P's. In technology, and you'll hear over and over again, so for those of you, my computer science friends, there's people, process, and platform. All decisions are made on people, process, and platform. Do you have a problem with having the wrong person do the job? Do you have a problem that you need to go through the workflow, or do you have platform or technology? And so if I can tell you anything on that part is, you want to simplify before you automate. And so that didn't make it to the list because it didn't have a good P on there. But I would give you that. In all things in life, whether that is technology or whether that is your life and deciding what you want to do, simplify it before you start to make decisions. So here's the first P. First P is plans fall through. And out of respect for myself, you see a big gap between the 5-year-old and the 30-something-year-old because 1992 was a really bad hair year. And I also, then the high school was a really big 80s hair. So we'll go from what this kid was to what happened here. I also think hair is an accessory, so you'll see some photos where things look different. That little 5-year-old girl right there wanted to be a TV anchorwoman. And I spent my entire high school career wanting to be a TV anchorwoman. And in fact, the first time, my sister watched me get mic'd up today, and I have a speech that I've used 4 years. The very, very, very first time I got in front of to speak, and I'm really proud, 1989 was the state champion for oratory. I wrote a speech. Great. And I can talk really fast. I'm really good at talking fast. And the speech was 8 minutes long, and it had to be 15 minutes long. And Mr. Hadley, our speech and debate teacher, said, Laura, I want you to do the same speech, but I want you to slow it down, and I want it to be in 15 minutes. And so day after day after day, I would stand in the mirror, and I would practice. This was before we had videos to play back, right? So I would practice. I did my tape recorder, and I would listen. And at that point in time, realized, go low, go slow. I used to watch Barbara Walters ad nauseum so that I could be a TV anchor woman. That's what I wanted to do. So I get through high school. I've done debate, which, by the way, if you haven't done debate, you need to do debate. Best thing for a career ever. Doing the good and the bad of the argument. You can negotiate anything when you know the good and the bad of the argument. So I get to this point where I'm going to go to Utah State in communications, and I'm going to be a TV anchor woman. And then my dad said to me in only way that a dad can say, so I'm going to say this in only way, do you want to do communications? Like, what happens if you're not a TV anchor woman? I don't know. Well, what happens? Are you gonna teach communications? Are you gonna like write for newspapers? Like, and then you have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I don't want to be a TV anchor woman. So the one part in there where the plans fall through, and I think this is here, I have a quote that I repeat over and over again, you plan, God laughs. Because that plan would have taken me away from my family that I love. The plan that I chose was, I'm gonna go to radiology school. I'm gonna go to radiology school because I can then have a trade career. And for those of you that know radiology, very similar to nursing. You can go for 2 years or you can go for 4 years, where nursing branches off and does pharmacology, radiology branches off and does physics. And I'm kind of a nerd. I may not look like it, but I'm kind of a nerd, and physics was my thing. So branched off, did radiology, and loved it. Like, was absolutely amazing. I'm in the hospital, and I'm seeing everything from the trauma to babies being born. I have a really good physician friend of mine who says, the two amazing things that happen in the hospital is when the beginning of life and at the end of life. And if you can celebrate both, then it makes the hospital an amazing place. And it is. You walk through the halls of a hospital, and I've been doing it for 30 plus years. You walk through and you see, you know what? People are crying because a baby's born, and they're crying because their loved one's gone. And from there, then you can pause, and you can really think, how can I make a difference in this space? So fast forward, I get to this girl right here, that's at this point in time. And that girl had a midlife crisis. I've done everything I could do at 28 years old in radiology. I had done as many modalities as I could do, which means I did mammography, and I did radiology, and I did CT. I became the director of radiology at a county hospital. I was serving on a board of directors for a national organization, and I'm thinking, wait, I've done everything I can in radiology, and I wasn't really sure 100% what to do. I called a good friend of mine who worked at CHW, where I'm at now, as a faith-based organization, and I said, hey, I need something different, and I know you love your job and whatever. So they hired me to be the vice president of applications. Now, I was going from operating a hospital to applications, and I had no clue what that even meant. And the reason they hired me was because I was the one who carried a BlackBerry when people weren't carrying BlackBerries yet. And that's 100% a true story. So I get to CHW, which I really wasn't working for a hospital, I was working for Perot Systems. And like, who even knows Perot Systems? Ross Perot ran for president, that's all I know. And I'm working for, getting paid by, trying to figure out this whole IT world. So I figured out this really cool trick. And this really cool trick was, I would just say, I don't know, I'm not technical. I'm clinical, I'm not technical. And for years and years and years, I would be like, I don't know, I'm not technical. At some point in time, I became the most technical one in the room. But as I build on each one of these pieces here, what happened is this, the cute little redhead here, that's my first senior vice president position. Now, I'll tell you, becoming a vice president is kind of like when you have your first kiss. You never forget it. Like, never. You're like, I'm vice president. So I looked at that picture, and it brings me such joy because I remember the passion that I wanted to change people. I wanted to build a culture of trust, and the power that I had that I wanted to create synergy and make healthcare better. So here we go here. Like I said, I planned to be the CIO, didn't set down that path, it happened, and so now what I get to do is I get to pick cool technologies and get them to transform an organization bigger than I thought I ever would, $40 billion company. So here's number two. Number two is perform with a pure heart. This is also, this is the pay it forward. I put this in here because I really am a dork. You go to Starbucks and you have a drink and someone pays for a drink and you go for it and you keep going. One time when this happened, I decided to do a math equation on how many people actually could be affected if you pay it forward. We have in our a really good close friend, my husband's best friend, gives a lot. And I remember for his 50th birthday, we were on a cruise. And there was this couple that came in that really wanted to buy a watch. And look, they were on a honeymoon and they had no money and the watch was like $300 and they couldn't afford the $300. And we watched them come in and out and in and out and in and out of the gift shop. And he went up to the sales guy and said, what I want you to do, because their budget was $100 for it. He said, what I want you to do is to charge them $100 and I will pay the difference. But do not tell them that I did that for him. From there, I have watched the growth for him and the growth. That couple went back then and guess what they did? They went and bought this small, with the money they had left, they went and bought this for this little kid that was on their little turtle thing that they wanted to do and gave it to him. I can guarantee you, as you watch it goes, as a math equation, you're giving all the time. Now, I said I'm a caregiver, right? I spend a good portion of my time making certain that those around me are being cared for. And I need to tell each one of you, you do that and you can't expect anything back. That is something that if you expect something back, you then start to get anger in your heart, and anything you have for a passion moving forward, never going to happen. This right here is passion, prayer leads to purpose. So I promised my sister, who is the mother of the Snow students, that I wouldn't embarrass her, so this is not to embarrass her, but when I look at people who have passion and people that I want to emulate, there's two of them that are here. There's a couple others, but two here. Tamara, who's in the audience, first best friend I've ever had, and president of my fan club, and I'm the president of hers. She broke her foot several years ago. And sitting there with the broken foot had to do something, right? We don't sit still. That's not something our family does. We don't sit still. And over the course of time, and in addition to having the church calling, learned to become a genealogist. Now, being a genealogist is like being CSI. It is an investigation game, and it is really cool. And what happens, though, is if you're listening to the universe, angels will speak to you, right? I believe in my job and what I'm doing, angels speak to me all the time. I can guarantee you, in the passion, the purpose around becoming a genealogist, this happens. This other lady here sitting here is Mindy Smith, and Mindy is a nurse at Mercy Gilbert, one of our hospitals. I met her in July. In July, I went in to go get surgery done on my right knee. And I'm kind of just doing my thing, and I'm kind of talking, and we're talking about innovative technologies, and she and I just kind of bonded. We just kind of started to bond. And she says, I feel like I have to tell you a story. Okay. And she said, I really bothers me in the OR that women come in and they've had a miscarriage and they leave without anything. And so, I've never had a miscarriage, but I really bothers me that it's not a celebration. It's not a celebration like it would be if you have a baby. You have a baby and you have a blanket and you have a hat and the whole works. And she says, so I did lots and lots of prayer, and I started and decided that I was going to start to make blankets. And so she got a bunch of volunteer neighbors to help her with this. Fast forward a couple months later, she was at a hamburger place near one of our hospitals, and this lady was sitting there and kind of crying. And she goes up to her and she goes, are you okay? And this lady, older lady's crying and crying and crying. She goes, my husband's having surgery tomorrow. And Mindy says, is your husband so-and-so and so-and-so? And she goes, how do you know that? She goes, well, he's my patient. He's the first patient, so I know that. And this woman all of a sudden has calm, and they kind of start to talk. And they just become friends. And she's calm. The next morning, Mindy goes out to get the patient, sees the caregiver, and the caregiver is crocheting white blankets. And Mindy says to her, what are you doing? And she says, I do this when I'm nervous and I give them away. And Mindy said, I had prayer and I in my mind kept saying white blankets, white blankets, white blankets. And she says, so I've started this little project. And and the lady says, I have to be a part of this. I have to be a part of it. And I said, okay. And she said, okay. So they did, as they were starting to pull together, how do they scale this program for other hospitals to give away a box that has a little blanket, the lady comes in, opens up a box that she had kept. Eileen White is the name of her daughter, that would have been 50 years old, that died when she was 7 weeks old, and that's why this lady started to put me in blankets. And Mindy says, white blankets, right there. So the project is called White Blankets, and it's Mercy Gilbert and doing great. And so she's telling me all this, because I was talking about passion and purpose being here. And I said, Mindy, do you want to know what's really funny? And I said, what is that? I said, I had said, come here, I want to make a difference. And she goes, well, you know what's really funny? And I said, what's that? She goes, I prayed that someone would come in here and help me scale my program. So there's two people who stopped and paused and listened, and the two of us are working on getting that scaled across Common Spirit Health, which, again, all of our hospitals that are there. This right here is find a partner with common goals. So the saying that's up here, I'll just give you a precursor. On the Hallmark Channel, there's a show called The Good Witch. The season ending, season 3, they finally got married, so there's the vows, and I loved it. So that's up there, and you can just kind of read that. In the meantime, this is my mom and my dad. So everybody has to have a Ray Young and a David Young in their life. I'm telling you what. I'm such a great mixture of both of them, and been married for 52 years, and great advice, great passion. But the one thing that my dad will tell you is you have to like them before you love them. And my mom will say, pick someone with a common goal and a common purpose. And if you can find someone with a common goal and a common purpose, it's amazing. So I tell you about my last name. So last name is Young-Shehata, which is a mouthful. When I married my husband, he said there were 3 things that were mandatory. 1 was that he got to pick the wedding cake. 2 was that he got to pick the wedding ring. And 3, he got to pick the honeymoon spot. Okay, that's great, that's fine. Day before the wedding, we're sitting there doing some appetizer or some side, and he said something about when are you changing your name? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not changing my name. And he goes, I'm Egyptian. You have to change your name. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm not changing it. And he was really very, very offended that I didn't change his name. Now, part of the problem that's happened over the years is that I travel, and he became Mr. Young, and he doesn't like being Mr. Young at all. So I finally, 2 years ago, for his 50th birthday, said, you know what do you give the man who has everything that I truly love, that we have a common goal and a common purpose? And that was given him his name, which is why we have a hyphenated Young-Shehata. And I do love my husband. He's an amazing person. All right, next one is understand your role in the universe. I've said a couple times here that to stop and pause and listen. This right here was one of the most amazing experiences that happened to me. So this is Michelle Obama in the center. Hair was terribly short in this one, so just love the hair there. I had told a friend of mine that I was really, really, really impressed with Michelle Obama. And I was really, really impressed with her because of what she was and what she was able to do. And really, she took a lot of heat. So for those of you who haven't read her book or who don't know her story, she was a lawyer. She actually hired Barack. I mean, she was the lawyer beforehand. Barack was always late to meetings and charming, and she was the one who got things done. She was in a really high-powered law firm and decided she wanted to find her purpose. She quit her job at the high-powered law firm to work at a hospital to help be as a program manager to really help transform healthcare long before this election thing happened. The election thing happened, and she is a strong black woman with an opinion, and she took the heat in the media. And she took her passion then was about children. And I remember being angry at the time when she changed all the food and the things like, let my kids just eat their Cheetos. And then I realized, wait, this garden thing is a great, awesome opportunity. And so I was telling her the story, and I said, it's that you put out there, who is the one person dead or alive that you would like to have lunch with? And I said, Michelle Obama. And by putting that out there, 6 months later, I get a phone call and says, hey, Microsoft is hosting an event. Would you like to meet Michelle? Yeah. So that's where that's at. Every word, every thought, every action you do, everything matters. And I can't tell you, if you haven't seen the movie The Secret, I would highly, highly recommend it. Every time, I'll think of a friend and I'll be like, I should call them. And sure enough, two hours later, I'll get a phone call or I'll get a text. So I encourage you to do that. So just as a side note for Michelle walks up, and she's the same height that I'm 5'10". She walks up and I said, I love that dress. And she goes, well, I love yours. And I go, oh yeah? And she goes, yeah, we could share closets. And I said, you know what? For the rest of my life, I'm going to repeat that Michelle Obama said I could share her closet. So how that was it. This right here is probably the most important advice I'd give you. This is number 6. This is don't look for the pay. When I was getting my master's degree, one of my instructors said, Don't look for the pay, don't look for the title. Look for the right organization and the right boss, and the rest will come. And if there's anything that you take away today, anything at all, I will tell you, this has served me well. So I started out at Scottsdale Healthcare. My boss there, his name was Tom Sadbury. Tom Sadbury said to me, Laura, I love radiology technologists. And the reason I love them is because you know the hospital. You've been in every nook and cranny, everywhere. Second, followed by pharmacists. Pharmacists follow and go everywhere else. He says, you know, I love nurses, and nurses are the ones that run the hospital, but they get very, very specialized because they have to. You're an OB nurse, or you're an ER nurse, but radiology, you know the hospital. His mentorship was one that I knew that I was going to get into hospital administration. The other at Scottsdale Healthcare, and very kind of on the raw personal story side, I was going to school, getting married, having babies. You can do that in any order you want. I chose to get associates, get married, have babies, bachelor's and master's. And you can do it any way, more difficult path. I was at the place where I had the associates, had the marriage, had babies, and I was working in mammography, which I loved. I had such a strong passion around it. And I was doing a procedure called needle lokes. Now, what happens is if you have a mammogram and you have cancer, but you can't feel it, because they always tell you to look for lumps, but if you can't feel it, you'll see it on the mammogram and it look like a little sand. And what happens then is they do a needle loke procedure. So they're taking a needle to localize where that's at. And they put you in the mammogram machine, they put the needle in, and then the surgeon, when you go to surgery, will go straight to that needle and take out the cancer. So I was playing doctor is what I was doing. Like, I don't have an MD behind my name, and I was playing doctor, and all the doctors were letting me do it. And every day I would do it, and I was connecting with the patients, and it was amazing. One day I go into the reading room. Dr. Sam Hessel was an amazing Jewish doctor that was the hardest on me of any other human I ever know. And Dr. Hessel said to me, what are you doing? Excuse me? He goes, I'm the doctor, not you. And he proceeded to yell at me, and I'm like fighting back the tears. And he goes, yeah, I'll take this over. Okay, got it. So send the patient off, and I went in there with every bit of big girl anything that I could do, and I said, Dr. Hessel, I respect you. And I respect that you went to medical school, but I don't respect the fact that you treated me that way. Now keep in mind, I'm getting ready to cry. And he says, okay. And I looked at him, and then he started laughing, a big belly laughter. And he said, Laura, you're the smartest one in this hospital. You should be running it. Why haven't you got your degree yet? At that moment in time, you think of having the right organization and the right people. They had tuition reimbursement, and I had a leader tell me what I needed to go do. I went home and I looked at the paperwork. Rachel, my middle daughter, at that point in time, I realized had I done it, that I would have been done right when Rachel was born. And so I thought, you know what, I'm doing this. So Miranda and Rachel, my two older daughters, every night put them to bed, and then I would stay up doing homework and kept going. When I got to the master's, I thought, you know what, no one's going to tell me I can't do it. For all intents and purposes, it's a union card. I'm going to get my master's. I told you the story about going to Parosis. I worked at Maricopa Medical Center, which Karen Colley, who was my leader there, and Karen took an amazing liking to me. And she taught me to not be trite. And with that not being trite is what gets you the ability to get people to work with you and for you. So I had written this amazing email to one of the doctors. Like, it was one of those amazing rip-your-butt emails. It was so great. So great. And I reread it, and it was a piece of art. And Karen calls me up to her office, and she says, Laura, read this. And I read it, and I was like, yeah. And she goes, read it again. Okay. Read it again. All right. 10 times reading it, she said, it's kind of trite, isn't it? And I go, a little bit. She goes, don't send emails like that. And I will tell you what, that was 20 years ago, and I still follow her advice to this day. I go to Pro Systems. This is Ross Perot. And I told you here when I said, you know, who was Ross Perot? I will tell you what, one of the most moral, ethical men I've ever met in my life is Ross Perot. Ross Perot said to me in a group, not to me personally, but in a group, he said, you know, you guys like committees. And as you get into grown-up life, I'm telling you what, committees are a drag. My daughter Camden said to me one time, does your boss know that you're in meetings all day? I said, yeah, that's what we do. And so he said, if you want to kill a snake, don't form a snake killing committee. Just kill the GD snake. Okay. And I follow that advice. Like, look, let's just solve things. Let's just get things done. Let's make things happen. Along the way, that's Michael Dell standing there next to me there. I knew there was a period of time I knew that I didn't have enough technology behind me. I'd been in healthcare. There was lots of different mergers, acquisitions going. And I made the decision that I was going to stay with Dell instead of staying with Catholic Healthcare West. I had approached Karen Quintos, who works for Michael Dell, and said, "This, there's a lot of women in technology, but how can we get involved?" Michael was so great, and this was before Me Too was a thing, and this was before women in tech was a thing, and he said, create an organization. So we created an organization to say Women in Search of Excellence, WISE, Women in Search of Excellence. And he had with that, it was called the Leadership Imperative, and all of his direct reports would go across the country and speak on his leadership imperatives. Now, traveling is not as fun as it sounds. It gets kind of exhausting after a while. Michael said to Karen, hey, if Laura wants to do it, she can do it. By him opening up that opportunity, I was a mouthpiece speaking for Dell, for a man who very much supported not just women, but in general, supporting diversity and diversity of thought. Anything, again, if you take anything from this right here, find the right organization, find the right boss. Here is putting in a little of my tech nerd speak here. So this is pause and pivot. So in technology, when you're implementing a project, you can do it one of two ways. You can do waterfall or you can do agile. Waterfall is a very traditional project management plan that I have a task, I'm going to finish it, I have another task, I'm going to finish it, another task, I'm going to finish it. Agile is what we do in the digital world because you got to have, time is money, you got to make space. And so I'm going to talk to the tech side of it, and then I'll move further into what other, we can go into this side of things here. So on the tech side, if someone says, hey, I want to get from point A to point B, there's lots of ways that you can get to point A to point B. And so you say, from point A to point B, let's start. And you start with a skateboard. And that's going to get you to point A to point B. Then you realize very quickly, I need to iterate, and I'm going to need to change, and I'm going to get a handle, because that's going to make me faster. And before you know it, as you continue, you pause, and you get to this place where you have a car. That's way more efficient, but that takes a lot longer to get to. At least you've got a place to get there. I do that in the workplace. I do that on the personal side often. When if you stop and you think, okay, so 9 months ago, I was serving as the executive vice president, and I was traveling a ton. So thank you to all my family who was patient as I'm not in my zip code more than 1 or 2 days a week. And you're going and you're going and you're going, and then you stop and you think, wait, where am I really making a difference? So when I stop and pause, it's kind of like when you've been working and you're studying, and all of a sudden you get to take a ski vacation. And you take a ski vacation and you realize, oh, wait, here's the way that I want to rearrange my room. Or wait, here's how I'm going to be able to fund my car. It's that stopping and pausing and clearing your brain. And I've done that over and over again. And if you stop and you can really say, okay, wait, I'm at this fork and I'm at this crossroads. What is the best way to do that crossroads? There is no right and there is no wrong, there's only do. I think that's a Yoda quote, so you can do the Star Wars quote on that piece. But continually just stop, just pause, think about who you want to be. I'm going to end on one more technology story. It's an implementation I've done on a product called IQ, just because it's kind of another cool one. And then I've got, I think, 10 minutes, David, for questions. So again, along the lines of pausing, listening, how can I make a difference? There is a new company called LeanToss who came to me with some ideas and suggestions on how can we implement technology in the hospitals. Now, their technology is based on airplanes and how air traffic control. So at the Atlanta airport, the busiest airport in America, they have what happens above the plane, what happens below the plane. They had a goal to add 1 million flights without adding any runway. They were able to, they added 1 runway with 1 million flights per year by assessing the data. Look, there's lots of data. Whoever tames all of this data wins. So we were talking through this. How can we do this in a hospital setting? How can we do this? So we have implemented at 38 hospitals at Dignity Health product called IQ that takes all of that data in the OR. So we have a really super expensive suite, a suite that has a robot. That robot sits empty all day long. And what that means is you may need to have foot surgery, and that room's not being used, so we have to book out about 3 weeks. We took all the data, and what we were able to do is all of those appointments we're able to do in 4 days instead of in 3 weeks. So every small thing you do makes a difference. Every word you do, every patient's care, your family cares. And I am hopeful, as each one of you are coming forward, that you find that peace and you find how you can make a difference for your neighbor or for what you do in life. So David, I'll turn this to you. All right, so we have 10 minutes for questions, and I know that my super spies is that they like to have questions. So David, I don't know if you want to, I'll start from there if there's a question. Yeah, you can. Oh, yeah. Okay, so Martina McBride in 2003, she wrote a song, In My Daughter's Eyes. And 2003 was a rough year for me because I had a super surprise pregnancy, not thrilled about it. And this baby was born, who's sitting right here, and song came out, and I'll tell you what, this is the best surprise I've ever got. This child saved my life, and that is that's song number one. Song number two is One Republic has I Lived, and I Lived is every part of keeping yourself connected and just being a part of the universe. Love that one. The other one, and my daughter Miranda loves that song. My other one is Alison Krauss, and that's Rachel's song. And so those are three. Those are three. Thank you for asking that. And if any of you saw me beforehand, I'm a music person, so music was kind of flowing. All right, so I'll tell you here. I'll do this one. Who's my favorite singer? Because this comes about passion too. If you does anyone know who Andy Grammer is? Andy Grammer is my hero. I might be Stalker fan. I've seen him 7 times. He, and if you haven't seen his podcast, and in fact, you talked about, do you have gone on break, you don't have Convocation, I challenge you all to go listen to his podcast. One of the things that Andy says, talking about passion, finding your passion, his whole life he's wanted to be an artist. And then this thing happens when you become an artist, is that you write a song, a moment in time, and it may be when you broke up with a girlfriend, or maybe when you had a baby. And then you might like that song, and you might not like that song. But what happens is artists get depressed because they get stuck in that moment, and every day they have to come on stage and sing that same song over and over and over again. And so what Andy Grammer has done is how do you continue to build on your passion? And that song that the audience connects with, because, by the way, it was his first breakup. It might have been their first breakup, too. And so you have to be able to stay connected and have passion on that. I can't see. You know, that's a great question. So the question was, how did you know that moment when you found that passion to do that? And this is going to sound completely odd, so just follow me here because I do have a great answer. When I worked at Maricopa Medical Center, I was really unhappy. I knew that I needed to leave. And so it was January 22nd. I know that because it was 3 days before my birthday. And I went to go visit our CEO. And what happens, my dad has a quote, the closer you get to the top, the closer you get to the door. And as a vice president, there's lots of stress, right? And I was talking to her about formalizing my position because it hadn't been changed in HR yet, but I had the title and the whole works. And she said to me, Laura, you're the best executive I have. I'm just not sure where you fit. And I said, okay. And I walked out of her office, and I had peace. I knew it was time for me to leave. I mean, I knew. So I went down, and that's when I called my friend at CHW. And so April 6th at 2:22 p.m., I got a phone call and that I was offered the job at CHW. So I called my friend in materials management, and I said, it's 2:22, and I have a new job. And as God is my witness, every time I know that I'm on the right path, I see a 22. And every single time. And in fact, I think, Sophia, I think you're sitting in seat 22. If you look, I think you are. But I had so much so, and I'll just tell you so much so, my husband says to me in 2015, I found our new house. And I was like, yeah, We haven't. We just remodeled our house. He goes, no, I found our new house. And I go, we're not moving. And he goes, the address is 222 North Val Vista Drive. And I go, stop it. And he goes, there's only 22 houses in the housing community. And I was like, do not put me in that box. And if you want to guess what my address is, that's where that is. So when I see a 22, I know that I'm on the right path. I know 100%. If I've not seen him for a while, I have to stop and pause and pay attention to the universe. Thank you for asking that. You guys are quiet. All right. You have one? See, I don't pause as much. I want to talk. I don't like, I'm going to be like, hey, I could wait. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is such an amazing question. And I don't even know if I have enough time to answer it. So the world is going technology. And I think, in fact, we're getting less efficient on some things versus not. We were doing an automation process. So I'm going to give you this example, and then I'll answer specifically your question. So we were looking at doing robotic process automation, RPA. We brought in a robot called Blue Prism to create a robot. And the whole idea behind it is that we wanted to more efficiently decommission employees leaving, so you can get your last paycheck, you get whatever, and then therefore do better on onboarding. And so we kind of dug into where can we best do that. What was really, really, really needed in HR and our Human Resources Department is we had a problem that when women went on maternity leave and had babies, they kept forgetting to put their babies on insurance. So two completely different problems, right? Completely different. So what we did is we automated the process to decommission and onboard employees, saved us about $400,000 doing that. Well, that's labor for it, so you can either lay off those people, or what we did is we took those people and we had them call the moms before and after the babies were born. So now we have a 100% rate that maternity moms the babies are added, which was expensive and a major dissatisfier, so it's repurposing. I think as you start to look at automation, if it's done right, that's how that works. If you go, like Chick-fil-A, you go in and they have a kiosk now. The intention is not to not give you customer service. The intention is, here, you do this piece by yourself, but we'll spend more time doing the more important things. Human do human tasks, computer do computer tasks. And I think you'll see a lot more of that as you continue to go. I mean, the technology is not going away anytime soon. Thanks. Thank you.